When you think of Marcus Aurelius, what comes to mind? For most of us, it's the Philosopher-King, the last of the 5 good emperors, the guy whose private journal, the Meditations, has been a guide for people for, almost 2,000 years now? He's a true icon of wisdom and self-control. But here's the thing, for all we know about his life, for all the deep thoughts we have from his own pen, there's a huge mystery surrounding his death. Where did the Philosopher-King actually breathe his last? It's basically a 2,000-year-old cold case, and today, we're gonna solve it.
So our trail starts right here, on the bloody northern frontier of the Roman Empire. You see, for the last years of his life, Marcus wasn't lounging in some Roman palace thinking deep thoughts. No way. He was in a province called Pannonia, which covers parts of modern-day Austria, Hungary, and Serbia, fighting the absolutely brutal Marcomannic Wars. And it's right here that our mystery is buried.
All right, let's pop open the case file on this one. We've got a few solid facts to work with, but they all circle around one big, glaring, 2,000-year-old question.
First off, we know the exact date he died, March 17th, AD CE. I mean, that's incredibly specific, right? And that precision is what makes the mystery of the location so weird. How on earth could they know the when, down to the day, but not the where?
And that brings us to our 2 prime suspects. On one side, we have Vindobona, a Roman fort that would, eventually become the city of Vienna. And on the other, we have Sirmium, a huge military and administrative center in what's now Serbia. For centuries, historians have been arguing over which one it was.
To get to the bottom of this, we have to do what any good detective would do. Go back and interview the original witnesses. And as you're about to see, their stories, they don't exactly line up.
Okay, now take a look at this. You start to see a pattern pretty quick. Most of the ancient writers are kind of vague. They just say he died in Pannonia. That's not much help. But 2 key witnesses, Tertullian and Aurelius Victor, give us specific locations. The problem? They're completely contradictory.
So let's call our first witness to the stand, the Christian writer Tertullian. He's writing just 17 years after the emperor's death, and he is crystal clear. Death at Sirmium on the 17th of March. This guy is a contemporary. The event was still fresh in people's minds when he wrote this.
But then we get this curveball from our second witness, the historian Aurelius Victor. He's writing almost 2 centuries later, 181 years to be exact, and he is just as certain that the emperor died at Vienna, which is our other suspect, Vindobona. So here it is, the core of our mystery, a direct he said contradiction, straight out of antiquity.
So what do? We have 2 ancient sources telling us 2 completely different things. How do we figure out who's telling the truth? Well, we have to cross-examine our witnesses. We need to really dig into their credibility, who they were, when they were writing, and crucially, why they were writing.
Let's put them side by side. On one hand, you have Tertullian. He's writing just 17 years after it happened. But the really important part is the context. He was writing an apology, basically a legal defense of Christianity addressed to powerful Roman officials. If he made a dumb factual error, his entire argument would have been laughed out of the room. On the other hand, we have Victor, writing nearly 2 centuries later, getting his information from sources that were already old news.
And this is the clincher for Tertullian. This is why his testimony is so compelling. He wasn't just dropping this detail casually. He was using the exact date and location of the emperor's death to mock the goddess Cybele. He was pointing out that her priests were making sacrifices for the emperor's health after he was already dead in Sirmium. Think about it. If he got the place wrong, his whole zinger falls flat, and he's the one who ends up looking like a fool. The stakes for him to be right were incredibly high.
Aurelius Victor, on the other hand, his credibility starts to fall apart pretty quickly when you look closer. Historians have found a whole pattern of errors in his work. He gets Marcus's birthplace wrong. He gets the year his son Commodus became Caesar wrong. He confuses major imperial laws. He even messes up the math on how long the emperor reigned. This isn't just one little slip-up. It's a track record of being sloppy, and that casts some serious doubt on what he says.
So, the testimony's pointing hard towards Sirmium, but, we don't have to rely on just that. We can build an even stronger case by looking at the circumstantial evidence, the emperor's own military strategy in his final months. Let's try to recreate his last campaign.
Okay, so let's just walk through the timeline to see how this all plays out. In late 1708, Marcus is on the northern Danube frontier, fighting Germanic tribes, like the Quadi. By 179, he scores a major victory against them. But the war isn't over, not by a long shot. His focus now shifts to a totally different enemy, the Sarmatian Iazyges, who are located to the east. So, to fight a new enemy in a new region, he would absolutely need to move his headquarters for the winter of 179 and into 180.
Just look at the map for a second. The campaign against the Quadi in the north was run from bases like Carnuntum, but to launch a whole new war against the Iazyges, you need a base further south and east. And the number one established go-to Roman military headquarters for any campaign in that region was, you guessed it, Sirmium. It's just military common sense. The strategy demanded that he move there.
Okay, it's time for the verdict. We've looked at the testimony, we've established a motive. Now let's look at the final piece of the puzzle, the scene of the crime itself.
And this is where another ancient writer, Herodian, comes in. Writing in the 240s, he gives a detailed description of the location where Marcus died. He doesn't give us a name, but he gives us something just as good, a physical description of what was there right after the emperor passed away.
So according to Herodian, we're looking for a place with three key features. Imperial quarters, a palace basically, fit for an emperor, a large military camp, and a big open field or plain nearby, a place you could assemble the entire army. This is our checklist for the death site.
So let's take our checklist and see how our two suspects stack up. Vindobona? It was a standard legionary fort. It had a camp, sure, but no imperial palace. Sirmium, though, it's a perfect match. It was a major imperial city that we know for a fact Marcus Aurelius used. It had an imperial palace, it had a military camp, and it was situated on a large plain. The physical evidence lines up perfectly with Sirmium, and only Sirmium. So, it all comes together, doesn't it? We have three totally independent lines of evidence, all pointing to the exact same conclusion. The best testimony, from the earliest, most credible source, says Sirmium. The motive, his military strategy, required a move to Sirmium. And the scene of the crime, the physical description, only matches the facilities at Sirmium. The case is closed. So, the mystery of where Marcus Aurelius died is solved. But this leaves us with a really fascinating final thought. We always picture him as the calm, stoic philosopher. But think about what this means. His final days weren't spent in quiet contemplation. They were spent in an imperial war room in Sirmium, planning the next phase of a brutal, grinding frontier war. It's a powerful reminder that the man who wrote so beautifully about accepting fate was also a man who fought relentlessly to shape it, right up until the very end.